Welcome back to a new video. I have so much training that I have done this week. This video is 40 minutes long, and the last two workouts of the week are going to be in a new video because it would be even longer because my Thursday and Friday sessions were pretty long sessions as well. And I suppose that's kind of just the nature of training right now. Is I'm just doing volume and stuff, but I made a video talking about kind of the next 11 weeks or what I kind of envisioned them to look like, and I kind of went off the rails, and the rails that you will see me going off will be in the two subsequent videos, or at least probably one video, because I'll probably combine those two, so it'll be another pretty long video since Thursday and Friday were pretty long sessions. But I stuck with the program for the most part, and it wasn't like I did crazy, necessarily insane training, but if you saw my 171 clean, obviously not in the plan. But the reason I kind of let myself go off the rails is, one, is just kind of fun. It's kind of fun just to do the training how you want on any particular day. But I also was looking ahead to winter break, and the 20th of this month, which is a Friday, is a day that I would like to go heavy because the Saturday, the day after that, I most likely won't be training because I'll be going home or to my hometown for Christmas dinner on that 21st. And so I think it's at 2 p.m. So I most likely won't do any training in that morning. What I might potentially do is actually go to the gym in Canton, Ohio, the Rubber City weightlifting place, on that Sunday, if I'm feeling up to it. So I kind of have to see, closer to that time, since it's still a couple weeks from now. But based on how this last couple days of training went, tells me that as long as I'm doing the volume in the squats, and really, just volume as far as like pressing and stuff as well, I'm going to get stronger. And it doesn't mean I necessarily get a free pass just to do, whatever I want. But at the same time, I do have a higher ability to be more flexible with what I want to do. Like, I don't necessarily need to do, snatch doubles multiple times a week or whatever. Like, I can do different kinds of training on different kinds of days as long as I'm hitting kind of the volume metrics that I need to hit, as far as, doing volume in the squats, getting some volume in the pressing, doing some pulls and stuff like that. And so I don't know necessarily what next week of training will look like, but it will be interesting. Doing these doubles were really difficult, doing them without straps. Trying to challenge myself with that. I don't know if I necessarily want to keep doing them. I feel like it would probably be good to do them, but most likely not multiple times in a week. And I think that's kind of what pushed me away, into doing my Thursday and Friday sessions, where I just kind of did a bunch of different exercises. Was the fact that the doubles are really hard, and up to 105 is pretty inconsistent. Just because of the speed got so slow, and the fatigue was there, which in one sense would mean that it'd be good, good way to practice at. But at the same time, if I'm feeling strong, I don't necessarily want to just limit myself to doing doubles. And it's a good challenging session to do. So it's one of those things, like, I'm going to keep it in, not necessarily in my back pocket, but kind of like have that plan to where I'm going to do that. But on this session here, I did 6 doubles. I believe I talked about this in the programming video because I had already done this session. But I did the doubles all the way up, and then that top double with 105, and then put straps on for the drop down sets. And I don't necessarily think I'm going to do, I'm just might adjust things to where, like, a session like this, I might try to keep them not necessarily a little bit lighter, but focus more on just getting up to that top double and not necessarily getting a bunch of drop down sets. It's a little bit tricky for programming for my kind of, I guess not really my kind of training, but just for training, because I'm going to train every day, and that's kind of my assumption. And so trying to plan to do volume multiple times or frequently is obviously not really a sustainable way. Some of the ideas that I was having that you'll see in the next 2 videos is to kind of go through progressions, and it just was a whole bunch of different exercises, but just singles with them, and not necessarily doing that every day, but have like a general thing that I'm trying to focus on for that day. So still doing the main lifts and squats and stuff like that, but like on the first day, a lot of work in the snatch, and then by the time I got to clean jerks, the fatigue was built up, so I didn't work as hard at those, and then getting some squats and some pulls and stuff like that, and trying to make those adjustments day to day. So like that day would be more focus on pushing the snatch, and then on the subsequent day pushing more of the clean jerks or cleans, as you saw or potentially saw with that 171 clean. And so kind of having those different focuses, because on that session where I did that big clean, I did some no foot power snatching and then some no foot snatching, but I wasn't trying to like max them out or like trying to go crazy with them. And so trying to go lighter with those while still frequently doing the main lifts, allowing me to practice, but then allowing me to kind of focus more on a different lift, whether it's a push press or an overhead press or a clean or a jerk or whatever with that. And that's kind of my idea for today, is still do a similar session to where I'm doing a bunch of different exercises, but the focus is conserving my energy, or at least trying to push on the jerks from the rack and having that be the kind of the main thing, or at least the most aggressive thing that I push on a day, while still, of course, trying to make sure that the strength work is done in a logical fashion. I'm not going to try to do 5x5 squats every day or something like that, but right now I like the general theme of what I had with those 11 weeks, to where I would do squats really kind of about 3 times a week. And it's not necessarily that I won't do it more than that, but the volume, getting that 3 times a week seems to be a pretty sufficient amount, especially with front squats. It's definitely difficult, but they're getting better. And I kind of like having the 2 front squat sessions, to where like the first time I think I did them at 100, and then the second time at 110, and just yesterday doing them at 120, and just continuing to build like that. And then the fronts or the back squats, still doing the volume in that. Like the first time I did it at 140, so when I do them again, probably not today on Saturday when I'm recording this, but probably tomorrow and Sunday, where I'll just go up to 160 and do that for 3 sets of 8 or something like that. So like the general idea of what I talked about in that program, I'm still going to adhere to for the most part, especially for the strength work. But a lot of the volume in the classics might just be adapted just to allow me to have more technical focus on a specific thing each day. So maybe it's like I go hard on all the snatch exercises, or I go hard on all the clean exercises, or the jerk, or whatever it happens to be on that particular day, and kind of just continually cycle through those. So it was really fun, and I don't know if that's like me just being a maniac, because I did like 13 exercises on Thursday and just went pretty hard at all of them. It's like looking at what I wrote, like it was a full page in a notebook of exercises, and it's like, this is not obviously sustainable every single day. But then when I did that session, I was like, I got through a lot of snatch work and I worked really hard at it, and then I got the clean jerk work and I was starting to feel the fatigue, which makes sense, because I did muscle snatch, power snatch, full snatch, and went pretty hard at them. And then, clean jerks got a little fatigued, but I was still able to push pressing and stuff. And it kind of showed me like I can do a lot of different things and still push volume in a pretty aggressive way. Because even, or no, I didn't do volume in the squats in that session, but like just the sheer amount of exercise that I did will allow me to get volume in. And obviously it's not something that I would want to do a session like that all the time. But it is kind of there because I worked out for probably 2 hours straight. Like I was obviously resting between exercises, but you're doing all of the different exercises, you kind of just go through them. But it gave me some really interesting ideas and some concepts to kind of play around with, particularly with snatch, because I dropped down all the way to 40 kilos. I did muscle snatches, and then dropped down to 40 kilos to do power snatches, worked up, and then dropped all the way down to 40 again to do full snatches. And it was interesting with snatching. And then as I got to clean jerks, I was like, I don't really want to drop all the way back down. No, makes more sense. Because the technique for clean jerks or power cleans is obviously significantly easier, but also the weights are just heavier, so the fatigue is going to be higher with those. Another adjustment I'll probably make is with muscle snatches. I very easily become addicted to muscle snatches and just want to do them all the time, of course, which I don't think is bad. But if I was doing how I mentioned in the programming video, doing up to 70 for a triple ends up adding up to being a lot of volume. And that's kind of the interesting thing with my frequency of training, because I do training every day, or at least I try to. is that even, the 70 that I'm going to be doing here for a triple, it adds up if you're doing it every day. And it adds up for the snatch. So it's not necessarily bad exercise or anything, or, too much weight or anything. But if I'm doing it multiple times in a week, then it's just going to add too much fatigue for other exercises that I need to focus on, like the clean or the jerk or the push press or whatever with that. But speaking more of other exercises that I focus on, overhead press, of course, the exercise focus I have is like here I'm doing no foot power snatching. And so like the exercise selection isn't really going to change. The no foot power snatching has really made my snatch feel good, and the full snatch. It's really interesting. So I definitely want to keep that in. It's hard to really describe how it feels better, but what I'm feeling different is the pull from the ground. Like I feel like I'm keeping it closer to my legs, but also that I'm able to more actively control my lats, if that makes sense, to where I'm not necessarily actively pulling the bar to myself, but I am holding the bar closer to my legs and my shoulders are more over the bar. So like my position that I'm pulling from is more balanced. And I had several sessions where I was trying to get up to 120 in the snatch, and it's because all of the previous ones that I was doing were feeling so technically good. And it wasn't as if I was feeling super fast or like explosive or like that, but it was just like the bar was just feeling like it was just going in all the right positions. I was catching it way behind my head, not in like an uncomfortable way, but like I wasn't bouncing around in the bottom. It was just like I was feeling really locked in with them. And I realized that that's where the no foot power snatching was really helping. And then I want to add in the full no foot snatches as well. I think on a session like this where I was doing power cleans for triples and then the overhead press, I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I just think it's not really that beneficial. Like I don't know how much doing power cleans with 70 will be helpful for me, other than for the technique and the mobility, since I am using the straps here. So it might have some utility in that regard. But the overhead presses here, we're all at 70. It's surprising to me. Like I had to double check to make sure I didn't reuse clips from a previous week. Like these are all new clips, because I was editing this and I looked and I'm like, this is like 40 minutes of lifting. And I don't know. I know I have usually have a lot of clips, but I was like, where did the editing go wrong? So that'll be something I'm paying attention to as I'm doing this commentary. If I have any, repetition in clips or anything that's, I duplicated something by accident, but I really don't think I did. I think I just had a lot of training clips, which is kind of hilarious. But outside of training itself, it went well this week. I did have interesting. It was also that Thursday, but I felt like I was starting to get a little bit sick. I had a little bit of a scratchy throat and a little bit of cough that was kind of there Thursday and Friday. And Thursday, I took some cold medicine just as a precaution, because sometimes you feel a little bit sick in the morning and then it just kind of develops throughout the day. But thankfully, nothing developed that Thursday or Friday, and I didn't need to take any, cold medicine Friday, even though I did have a little bit of a cough. For me, it's always more concerning when I get a cough or a sore throat, not because I necessarily, can't do anything when I'm sick, or if I have a bit of a cold, I can't do anything, or, whatever. But, just because of how much I talk as a teacher, it becomes a lot more of a problem if I have a throat issue or I have a cough or something, because it tends to get exacerbated just obviously talking all day. And thankfully, I've always had the mindset that I never really want to yell, and it's for selfish reasons, but also it's obviously good teaching practice not to be yelling all the time. But when you're in a gymnasium teaching, you do have to yell. And that's just because it's an open space and it's loud. And there are also times where kids being unsafe, or there's a fire drill. It's like there are situations where it's important to yell, and so it's not something that I will refuse to do in a sense. And hopefully that isn't picked up. But the heat just kicked on. But it isn't as if I avoid it entirely. But if you're always having to yell and stuff, you just kind of lose your voice. And I've never used a microphone or anything, and I don't really want to. I just don't want to wear it or figure out all of that. And so far, this is my fifth year. It's my fifth year of phys ed teaching, and haven't lost my voice yet via teaching yet. I've lost it probably once or twice, but that's like I have a really bad cold, all of that issues that come with that, and then just talking, and then just kind of is uncomfortable with that. But I don't think I've fully ever lost my voice really in my life, and I've jinxed myself, so I'll probably lose it next week, but hopefully not. But besides that, the teaching episodes that I'm in right now, or the teaching units that I'm in now, have gone really well. And I think it's also helped that my master's classes are done for the fall. I had my work done a couple weeks ago, which was nice, and just got all my finalized grades or whatever. So that's all completed. And I'm looking ahead as far as future master's classes, and I'll be done with my phys ed master's at the end of the summer of 2025, so I'll have it ready for next school year. But potentially, I was looking ahead at starting to work on more master's classes for potentially the next school year, if I could work ahead in that regard, and potentially make 2 jumps from master's plus 15 to master's plus 30 on my teacher's contract, which would be a pretty big bump in the scale. And obviously those bumps stay forever, so you make more money every year than you would without those bumps, of course, but then you're in a higher tract. So I still have to talk to someone to make sure, because we have 4 columns in our contract, and right now I'm at the first column. Since in my previous school district there was 5, because there was a bachelor's plus, and that just meant that you made a little bit more. Since I have 2 degrees and a minor randomly, just because I have so many classes, I was on that bachelor's plus, but in this school district they don't have that category, so I'm just at the column A. And next school year I'll jump to column B, which is a big jump, but then there's C is the master's plus 15 more semester hours, and then which is like 5 classes, and then the master's plus 30 is essentially it's 2 masters, but you don't have to actually have 2 separate masters, you just have to have the hours, so it's like 10 classes. But the goal is to go from column B next year, since that's when they do the salary upgrades, and then potentially the year after that be able to get up to the final category, the C column or the D column, and just ride that out and see, well, not really see, you can kind of see how much you make over the years. It's a nice thing with teaching, you can see in a pretty objective way how much money you'll make over the years. And it changes with new contracts and stuff, but it's usually only in a positive way. Usually it goes up. So it's kind of exciting to look ahead in that. But that's something I'm looking ahead for school to figure out. I think I have to email someone and ask about that, because in our contract it says you can only move 1 time a year. And my interpretation of that is it doesn't matter if you move from column A to C or B to D, you can only make that 1 move. So I can't go from A to B in a year and then in the middle of the year go from B to C. It's only once a school year you can move any not any direction, but only upgrade your salary or whatever. I'll double check that, because if that's something that's not necessarily allowed, like I would have to go maybe instead, like this is the alternative, is instead of going from B all the way to D, I would have to go to B to C for 1 year and then go to C to D the next year, which wouldn't honestly be like, if that was the case, it wouldn't be the worst, because it would just mean I would take less classes for the grad schools, for the next grad school classes stuff for the next one, so it'd be a slower pace with that, which wouldn't be the end of the world. It would obviously, I'd not necessarily lose money, but I wouldn't get that, upgrade faster, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. So I just have to check with someone, because obviously you don't want to do all those classes and stuff and then have to wait an extra year because of that. But I have to double check that, because I don't think it should be an issue, but that's something I'm looking forward to. So once I have that done, then it's just maintaining my licensure, throughout my teaching career. And thankfully at the school district that I'm at, they make it really easy to get credits to maintain your licensure. And obviously with all these master's classes I'm taking my next 5 years, so I just renewed so I'm good for 5 years from now, or at least I think till 2030. I think is when, because the 5 years doesn't start till the expiration of your previous one, which for me is the end of this school year. And so at 2030, I'll have plenty to do that upgrade again with all these classes that I'm taking for the spring and the fall and for the next one. So I'm good for the next 10 years when I'm 41, which is horrendously terrifying to think about that far ahead. But thankfully, life doesn't end when you turn 40. And at this current rate, based on what I've been told from veteran teachers, the state of Ohio is going from where you get your maximum retirement from the age or from 33 years of service to down to 30. Right now it's 34, and they just lowered it to 33. And I guess for a couple years it's going to be 33, and then they're going to knock it down to 30, or at least that's their goal. Hopefully, I'm still have a lot of years of teaching left. So in theory, at that point, that I'd be able to retire, I'd be 53, which is pretty young to be done with your job, which is kind of exciting. To have that opportunity. I mean, at worst, it would be 57 if it stayed at the 34 now, or 56 if it's at the 33 like it is now, which is still not bad. To be retired before I'm 50. I mean, before I'm 60, and that's one thing that was very lucky with. That I started teaching right after school, and I got a public school teaching job. So all those years started adding up right away, and I started when I was 23, or turned 23, and so. I guess I'd be 52 maybe. No, I think I'd be 53. Either way, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. But that's kind of exciting to have that financial plan mapped out all the way to those years. And now it's just getting through all the grad school classes, and thankfully they're not really that difficult. It's just work, which is not speaking for someone that will do 13 different exercises at heavy weights for fun in the evenings after teaching all day. Now I'm a bit of a workhorse in that regard, so putting in the work is not something I necessarily struggle with, especially because I can stay organized and stuff. When I think about, and I suppose I don't have a wife or kids or stuff like that, and so I have this time, but I do fill in that time with stuff. So it's not as if I teach, lift, and then do nothing. Obviously, I make these videos. I sometimes will live stream chess. Grad school classes. There's other stuff that I occupy my time with, and some could argue that I'd benefit from pursuing other things as well. But I think when I sit down at night and I think about how I spent my days or how I spent my time, it's interesting because I don't go, wow, I'm missing out. I'm not traveling, or I'm not married. I don't have kids. I enjoy my days. I have a really awesome job right now. I teach, phys ed to K-2 kids. It's a pretty sweet gig, and the school I'm at is pretty awesome. And I enjoy the people that I'm around, and not as if I didn't enjoy that at my previous school, but I certainly am in a better situation now, especially because the district is a lot more stable, financially and job-wise, and I still always have in my back pocket my special ed training and my 4 years of teaching as an intervention specialist. And so if something ever happened to the phys ed job that I have now, where I wouldn't be able to do it for whatever reason, I always have that in my back pocket, and I'm always able to go back to it. That's the nice thing. It's hard to get into phys ed, but to get to special ed, you basically just have to ask, and then you get transferred to it. It's also kind of interesting with my district, it being one of the largest ones in the state, is that there's always opportunities to move around. If I, for instance, wanted to go to a 3 to 6 school or to a middle school or a high school, it's a lot easier to potentially make those moves than it was at my previous district, and that's just a size thing. The previous district had 2 elementaries, a middle school, and a high school. This one has 2 high schools, several middle schools, many elementaries, and ELCs. So it's just a lot more different things. And so to me it's interesting because at least talking to different people, a lot of people shuffle around the district to get different opportunities or different things that they're looking for, and a lot of people don't necessarily leave the district, which is, I suppose, a good signal that the district is, a good place to be, even if people are trying to, move around in different places within the district. They're not trying to leave the district. But it also is nice because then, maybe in 5-10 years, maybe I want to go to somewhere else. Maybe this isn't, the best place to be at that point, or, whatever. Ideally, anyone that's listened to me talk for, a while, or, seen my lifting over the years, or really for any point, knows that I'm pretty routine based, and I like doing the same things over and over. And so if I could just know what I'm doing and stay in that position forever, that's probably going to be my preference. A change is not easy to make, and I think that's true of most people. But if the grass looks greener on the other side, but I'm not 100%, or I'm not forced to go to the other side, I'll probably just stay where I'm at, unless it becomes unattainable. And that's why I left my previous district, is they moved me from phys ed to special ed behavior unit, and it became unattainable to continue being there when you put in good years of work. And I suppose you could blame me, because the school district was going to vote to realign all of the buildings, so change all the grade levels. And I wanted to follow the current principal, because he was potentially, if they accepted the realignment, he was going to be at the other elementary building. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go back to special ed, because I know that building's going to be stable. I didn't want to stay in the current building, because it was going to turn into a 5-to-8 building. And so I was asked to originally, if the buildings are realigned, I want to go over special ed. And the realignment was rejected, and the district, never communicated with me that if if the buildings are realigned, we're still going to transfer you anyway. And they called and said, your transfer has been accepted. And I said, well, it was the day before the board had the vote, and the previous district was being run by the state because of how poorly the finances have been run. Which, if you're a smart detective, you could probably figure out, what district that is based on that information alone. But it was frustrating, because it was the day before the vote, and it was the 100% reason I'd want to transfer one way or the other, either stay at the position or transfer. Is like, I don't know how the buildings are realigned, and I wanted to be in an elementary building, and I wanted to be with the principal that's still at the previous building. It was, they said they would, let me know or call back, or, they didn't say anything was confirmed, because they said, this is and it was all verbal. It wasn't, I hadn't got anything in paper or written. And they said, well, we'll talk more, after the vote. And I said, great, let's do that. The vote went through, or was rejected, I should say. And so the vote was done the next day. And so then we all got letters, or at least a lot of us got letters saying what your position was for next year. And, mine was a completely different one. And I get them wanting to move me to special ed. I never had any delusion of them wanting me to move to that, because it's a harder position to fill. I have experience with it, and they think that I was just going to, lay over and take it, because they, didn't respect me. And what really bugged me was that they just never reached out afterwards. They never, I called and called and called, and never picked up, because they're, avoiding my phone call. And when you're in a small district, it's not like there's, 1,000 calls that they're getting. I mean, maybe, but, if I was getting run around the current district that I'm at now, you could justify it by saying that there's bunch of schools. It's one of the largest school districts, so they might have honestly a lot of phone calls that they're getting through, and so they might get lost in the shuffle. At this previous district, it's not, and so the person was avoiding the phone calls and avoiding essentially my frustration. And I'm not a maniac. I'm not gonna start cussing out a person or something like that, but obviously I was frustrated when they just weren't being honest, essentially, or at least, in my interpretation, they weren't being honest when they said, all right, we'll talk after, the vote. And then there was no discussion after the vote. There was no, my choice with that. And, after you work at a place for 8 years, and, only have been good for the district or only have had good evaluations and stuff. To kind of be done like that is disrespectful for one. But my 4 years as a intervention specialist, I was in what they call mild to moderate. And so what that means in the special ed world is essentially you're working with kids that have specific learning disabilities for the most part. And so they're kids that if you went into a classroom and say you're a substitute, you might not know who those kids are. They're not kids with severe physical or emotional or cognitive disabilities. They're kids that have a reading goal, a math goal, a writing goal, fluency goal, and otherwise they don't have extreme needs. So they're, AKA, pretty normal kids. They just have a learning disability. And that was my 4 years of experience. And so logically, if I was going to be shoehorned and forced to transfer, which they could have done regardless, whether I had asked to or not, because of how much instability they developed through their poor financial choices. But the frustrating part was that they put me into a position into a behavior classroom, a social communications classroom is what they called it, but it's a behavior unit. And I have had experience writing behavior plans and stuff like that, but that is a far cry from what my previous experience was for 4 years. Logically, if they're going to all right, we're going to put this guy in special ed because we can't fill this position and we're going to get rid of this phys ed position anyway, and blah, 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 put him into a position that is open. And that's, I guess another caveat to that would be if that was the only special ed position and they're, trying to just, they're getting rid of the phys ed position that I had and there's just no other phys ed position available, blah, blah, blah. This is the only one that we have there. Then that's what we'll do. Put them in that one. But you talk to people, you know what positions are open. And there was, literal positions open that I had done before. I don't remember the exact grade level, but like literally mild to moderate positions with grades that I've worked with before available and still open after they transferred me in. So then that got my wheels turning in my brain that they were hoping that I'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do the behavior unit. Please give me what I did before. And they'd say, oh yeah, we're being so charitable and give you that. Once I got that letter, I was ready to start looking. And it was a very frustrating experience because after, I got that letter, I'm like, what happened with that, phys ed position? Because it was either be a middle school phys ed teacher, which I was okay with if it was at a middle school, not at the previous school I was at, which is an elementary building. And what that means, the reason that, I don't want to do middle school phys ed in an elementary building is that the facilities weren't sufficient for that, which is why I was never for the realignment. An elementary building is built for elementary kids, K to 6. And you could argue that maybe not 6 shouldn't be in that building because they're starting to get too big for that building. But trying to bring 7th and 8th graders into that building would have just been a really poor choice, in my opinion. But what I found out, after, I get this letter, I'm getting a runaround, I'm reading the minutes of the board meeting. They had called back a phys ed person that they had previously ripped. And what that means is reduction of force, essentially laying off in teacher terms. And that meant that that lady who said, we'll talk later, had already made that decision prior to that point that I was going to be shoehorned into a position that I did not know if I was willing to do based on the realignment happening or not, which is, in my opinion, a pretty important thing to know how the buildings are going to be lined up to know where you want to be at. And so that was already made at that point, and so it was already put into their minds or put into the minutes or whatever that was already going to happen. So they already knew what they were going to do and knew that I was going to be upset about it, and understandably, in my opinion. And so that was really frustrating with that. And so once I got that letter that kind of got the ball rolling in my court to, start looking around and start applying to places. And I was willing to go back to special ed. And, in some sense, like if I had to, I would. Obviously I love my job now, so I want to do it forever. But if the stars aligned in a way where I was only able to do special ed, I don't mind going to that. And so when I was applying, I was applying for all kinds of jobs, phys ed and special ed, and there are a lot more special ed jobs than phys ed jobs available. If you've ever looked for a teaching job, a lot harder to come by with that. And so I started looking around for that. And what was nice is nobody was nobody was upset. I mean, at this point, there's already, everyone was leaving, either rift or leaving or whatever. And so like another person leaving wasn't really that shocking to anyone. But thankfully I was able to, I wasn't, pretending like, oh, I have this interview today. And our principal, and he's a really great guy. I think that he'll be a superintendent one day. Was very understanding. I was like, hey, I'm going to take this half day. I got this interview, and it's nice, with the admin that were there, still are there, or some that were laid off as well. How supportive they were of that, and just kind of goes to show that no matter what goes on at the top of probably many organizations, not even just a school, if you have good people in charge of your day-to-day operations, it makes life, I don't say bearable. That makes it seem like it's a struggle every day, but it makes life so much better when you have that collaboration. And that was there, and unfortunately, through many poor financial choices over the years, that they were. It's hard to say how they got to those decisions or how they happened exactly, but they were done and ruined what was a constantly improving situation, and a situation I would have never left. I really thought I'd be teaching there forever, and I was willing to. And someone's honking a car outside or set their alarm off. But it was a weird time for sure. And I still talk with people that I worked with there that are still there, and there's just new stuff that happens every day. And to me, it's a blessing. Not really in disguise, a pretty obvious one, based on where I'm at now from where, stuff is, standing there, that, I'm just in a much better situation and a nicer, I don't say nicer area, but just a situation I can see myself being at for 20 years and it not being like, oh my goodness, like this is going to get too stressful. Like I'm happy. It's a good thing to have. And I think a lot of people would love to have that kind of feeling. It's like, I don't ever really want to call in sick, and it's not like I have to go in. I can't use a sick day. Like the couple weeks ago when I threw up in the morning, like I was like, I still want to go to work, but I just can't. Like I literally am puking, so I physically can't. But on other days, I'm like, I don't really feel like, oh, I just need to take this day and like, recoup my mental health, or like I'm feeling down under the weather, like I can't push through it or whatever. And I just enjoy it, and it's a nice thing to have. And it doesn't mean that every day is perfect and everything goes perfect every day, but it's nice to be like, all right, I'm gonna go in and I already know what I'm gonna do. I know how it's gonna go, and it's just, I don't know, it's just all, I don't say it's all coming together, but it's just the routine's all there. And I think that's one reason my lifting's been pretty good the last couple months, and really in general, is that the stress that I have at work is less than in years past, and the stress that I have is much more predictable. And really, like, the biggest thing that I kind of have to pay attention to is how many steps I take during the day, and not like I'm like with a pedometer, measuring with my phone or whatever, or with my watch, and not even like, oh, I can't move or I can't do this or blah blah blah, but like making sure I'm not doing 12,000 steps before I do like a really heavy session, like trying to limit that. And like that's a really easy thing to pay attention to, and it's not a really that difficult, stressful or difficult or emotionally taxing thing to do. And that being like the quote unquote biggest thing I have to think about is not really a crazy thing to think about. And so it's just kind of a neat situation. It's nice to be in, and it allows me to still, want to edit and, make these videos and stuff. And I don't know, people have been subscribed for a while, or listen to many of these commentaries. I don't know if you all can tell the difference with how I talk, or if I sound more stressed or less stressed than in years past. But I feel myself like just emotionally better, and it's a nice thing, and it's just something I hope continues. And you never know. I didn't know my previous situation was just going to get destroyed in a sense, and you never know in that regard. So I have about 21 years more of teaching at least, and you never know what's going to change in that crazy amount of time. And it's just time continues to tick by. And I think for me, that's always been the most difficult, is you get into a situation, you hope that it just can last forever. Me lifting these weights, like, I just want to lift weights forever, but I know when I'm 55, 60 years old, I'm obviously not going to be as strong as I am now, or be able to lift, or have the same mobility that I have now and stuff. And it's kind of one of the reasons that I train every day. It's like, I'm eventually not going to be able to. And even my worst days, a bad training session where everything goes wrong, like, I still can train, and I still can go through all these ranges of motion. I still can have fun. Like, weightlifting is just fun to do. And one day I won't be able to do all this stuff, and I kind of want to do as much as I can while I can. It doesn't even mean that I'm necessarily going to hit like the best possible numbers I could ever do if I had the most optimal possible training program. But that's kind of the Ivan mindset, the squat every day mindset. Is like, I'm just going to train every day because I like training, and I like the routine. I like working hard, and I like trying to get better, even if I do it wrong. If I have a bunch of misses, or I work too heavy of weights and do too much. Like, I'd rather always be on that end of the spectrum than to be on, like, I feel like I didn't do enough. Like, I feel like eventually when I stop pushing weightlifting like I am now, then I'll sit down and be like, I didn't do everything perfect, but I tried to do everything as well as I could, and I tried to do as much as I could, and try to get as good as I could. And that's kind of the mindset I have now with all the years I spent playing baseball. Is I didn't do everything perfect, and there's certainly, like, if I was training myself for baseball as like a kid, I would have done things a lot different. But I did work as hard as I thought as I could, and did all of the things that I thought were correct at the time. And the same applied with basketball growing up. Like, I put in work, what I thought was correct, and you could always do things different in hindsight. And I'm sure I look back 10, 15 years back to this time, that I'll think about different things that I could have done better. And I'm trying to get better at doing that more quickly, trying to, like, each session or week or month or whatever, look back and, like, try to make those adaptations more quickly. And that's just, I think it's just a sign of just being more intelligent and mature than I was when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. But I think that's a mindset that not just myself, but I think everyone should kind of have, is like, just work as hard as you can. Even if it's not perfect, even if things go wrong, you can look back and be like, you try to do with the current information that you had, the current abilities that you had, you try to do as best you could with what you had at the time. And you always learn more, or you go through different things, or different things happen. But as long as you're just trying to do as much as you can with what you have at the moment, and you can apply that for myself. Like, I've applied that with teaching as well. As you look back, you're like, oh, I did this and that. But, like, with the current information, or the current plan, or the current thought that you had, like, you did as best as you could, and then you can look back and make those changes and try to make improvements. And that's really just life in general, I suppose. Just trying to be like that. And yeah, we're getting towards the end of this 43-minute time, so I'm gonna go do my Saturday training. It's ended up gonna be basically at night at 6 o'clock right now, so I probably won't get there till 7 o'clock or whatever. But it is what it is. We get it in when we get it in. And if you made it to this point in the video, I appreciate it. All my ramblings for 47 minutes. And you can imagine I have 2 more workouts to get edited. So those would made this video well over an hour probably. So did not want to have that. But anywho, thank you for making this far if you did. And I'll talk to you all in the next one. Have a great day. Peace.